Good evening, everyone. Will the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development please come to order? Before the committee can proceed with its business, it must elect a new chairperson. Are there any nominations? Minister Gertsen.
I would like to nominate Mr. Islifson.
Mr. Islifson has been nominated. Any other nominations? Hearing none, Mr. Islifson, please take the chair.
Good evening, everyone. Our next item of business is the election of a vice chairperson. Are there any nominations? Minister Gertsen.
Would he stand for nomination?
Mr. Nesbitt has been nominated. Are there any nominations? Hearing no other further nominations, Mr. Nesbitt is elected as vice chairperson. So tonight's meeting has been called to consider the following bills. Bill number 5, the Coat of Arms, Emblems, and the Manitoba Tartan Amendment Act. Bill number 10, an act respecting amendments to the Health Services Insurance Act, the Pharmaceutical Act, and various corporate statutes. And Bill number 11, the Elections Amendment Act. I would like to inform all in attendance of the provisions in our rules regarding the hours of adjournment. A standing committee meeting to consider a bill must not sit past midnight to hear public presentations or to consider clause by clause of a bill, except by unanimous consent of the committee. Prior to proceedings with public presentations, I would like to advise members of the public regarding the process for speaking in a committee. In accordance with our rules, a time limit of 10 minutes has been allotted for presentations, with another 5 minutes allotted for questions from committee members. If a presenter is not in attendance when their name is called, they will be dropped to the bottom of the list. If the presenter is not in attendance when their name is called a second time, they will be removed from the presenter's list. The proceedings of our meetings are recorded in order to provide a verbatim transcript. Each time someone wishes to speak, whether it be an MLA or a presenter, I would first ask that I would say the person's name. This is a signal for the Hansard recorder to turn the mics on and off. Also, if a presenter has any written materials for distribution to the committee, please send the file by email to the moderator, who will distribute it to committee members. Again, thank you all for your patience. We will now proceed with public presentations. With that, I will call on Mr. David Cron and ask that the moderator invite them into the meeting. Mr. Cron, I would ask you to please unmute yourself and proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. I'm David Crone. I'm with the Barrier Free Manitoba, and I'm speaking to you all tonight on Bill number 10 on changing how meetings are held in Manitoba. As you might know or might not know, Barrier Free Manitoba was established in 2008 for the full implementation of the Accessibility for Manitobans Act, which was passed by the House in December of 2013. I do want to thank the committee for bringing forward this bill to allow people to vote electronically going forward. We learned a lot during the pandemic. The one thing I wanted to bring up is that not every Manitoban has the internet or a computer for connection. So we don't want having electronic meetings to be a barrier for inclusion for those low-income Manitobans and for Manitobans that don't have those abilities. One in 175,000 Manitobans have a disability, and so that's a sizable portion of our population. And we really need to actively break down those barriers, whether it be technology, attitudinal, or changing the way we do business in Manitoba. So a couple of thoughts. One is nowhere in Bill number 10 does it mention the AMA, the Accessibility for Manitobans Act? Second, our recommendation to the committee is put it in legislation so that the people that are hosting or having the meetings in the election have an active offer. So that what that means is they have to put right in their materials that they'll provide it in a different way, in a way that allows a hybrid, let's say, of in-person and electronic voting and participation. It really is important that we all be able to participate in all different various parts of community. And you can't ask people to be a part of a society without allowing them the ability to access that meeting. Just as an example, there's over 20,000 Manitobans on EIA disability, and EIA disability does not really allow for the purchase of an internet or a computer. It's just the rates are too low. And also for folks that aren't on EIA, there are a lot of low-income Manitobans. And as we all know, that the cost of a SHA or MTS bill is pretty high these days. And it's not realistic to have somebody go to a library and participate in a meeting. So I just want to call to the attention of the committee and to the legislature that we really need to have a process and an active offer for inclusion for all Manitobans. And so that's my presentation. Thank you.
And I thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, we will now proceed to the question phase. Do we have any members wish to ask the questions of the presenter? MLA Asaguara.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for your comments and for your feedback. The perspective that you bring to this type of legislation and, the perspective that you and many others bring in terms of how all legislation should ensure that the needs and the experiences of folks living with disabilities, folks who face barriers, are considered when legislation is being drafted and when it's proposed. So I wanted to thank you for taking the time to share your concerns. And I'm wondering if you have any other thoughts on ways that legislation like Bill 10 could address the concerns you've raised in advance of this point. So specifically around, consultation, is that an area in your perspective, that could be enhanced in terms of this government bringing forward different bills so that before this point, these concerns are addressed? Thanks.
Mr. Cron?
Sorry, yeah. So thank you for the question. In essence, the AMA or the Accessibility for Manitobans Act has already been passed. So we shouldn't need to do a consultation for a bill that's already been passed and not fully implemented. What I really want the government and any political party and any organization is to really embrace the spirit and the legislation of the AMA and have those active offers and make sure that the government and the departments within that government are following the actual law of the AMA that's already been implemented.
Ms. Fontaine.
Miigwech. I just wanted to say miigwech to Mr. Cron for his presentation this evening and for the recommendations and the expertise and the insight that you provided the committee today. And also, I just wanted to say miigwech for all of the work that you do on behalf of Manitobans. I know that Barrier Free Manitoba does phenomenal work and does really critical, important work at ensuring that folks with disabilities' rights and concerns are brought forward on a myriad of different respects. And so I just want to thank you and say miigwech for that work as well.
Mr. Cron?
Well, I thank you for that. And my goal and the goal of the committee is to change the way we look at disability rights as not a disability right, but a human right, so that eventually we won't have to have these meetings and advocate so hard to change all those systemic barriers that are built into society. And we do it one bill at a time and one regulation at a time. So thank you for the committee.
Minister Gordon.
Good evening, Mr. Cron. I'm Minister Audrey Gordon. I've brought forward this bill, and I want to thank you for your presentation this evening and for all your comments. Thank you for sharing some information, some background information about barrier-free Manitoba and your specific comments about AMA and access to technologies such as the internet, computer, and other technology to be able to participate. One of the things that we've made sure of through this bill, and we will be watching very closely to see what happens with this section, is there's a section in the bill that refers to the power to make bylaws, and that allows a corporation or a board amend or appeal bylaws, and one of the sections provides for the reimbursement of expenses incurred by directors, officers, agents, and employees of the corporation in terms of attending to its business. So we have created some flexibility in this bill to allow corporations and organizations that are having these virtual meetings to make bylaws to ensure access to these meetings. So I do hope going forward, accessibility for individuals who have a disability would be considered. And I thank you so much for your feedback on this. I will take this back to the department as well.
Mr. Cron?
If there's anything that the department wants clarification and our point of view on it, I'd be more than willing to chat with them and try to make sure it's the most robust bill possible.
And we thank you very much for your time and your presentation this evening, Mr. Cron. Thank you again. So this concludes our list of presenters that I have before me. Mr. Gerard, sorry, Mr. Gerard.
I would ask for leave to ask a question.
Is there leave for Mr. Gerard to ask a question? Agreed? Agreed and so ordered. Mr. Gerard.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Just to be clear in terms of what you're asking for, I think that part of what you would like is that where we're amending the Condominium Act, the Cooperatives Act, and the Corporations Act, that there should be a clause in each of these amendments that specifically says that the meetings must follow the requirements of the Accessibilities for Manitobans Act. Is that the direction that you would like?
Mr. Cron?
Yeah, that's exactly what we would recommend to the committee. Is it reinforces a law that's already on the books, and it makes all those organizations look and see what the AMA Act is, because one out of almost 40% of the business leaders in Manitoba do not know what the AMA is, and this just reinforces something that's already been passed.
Again, thank you very much, Mr. Cron, once again for joining us this evening. So now we will proceed with clause by clause, and we will start with Bill number 5. Does the minister responsible for the bill have an opening statement? Minister Gertsen.
Only briefly, Mr. Chairperson. So members of the committee will know that this bill will officially make the polar bear one of the official symbols of Manitoba. And as members know, I think it's good reason for that. I think that in many ways, the polar bear is recognized as a symbol of Manitoba internationally, and even among many in Manitoba, iconic symbol of the province and of Churchill. I know that during the question and answer period, before or after second reading, during second reading, there was questions about what does this bill do to stop the eradication of the polar bear, its extinction, which is, I think in some reports predicted in 100 years if there's not measures taken. What does the bill do to end world hunger? There was lots of questions. The bill would do none of those things, but I think it's still an important bill, and it can have a lot of tertiary or side benefits in terms of bringing awareness to the importance of the polar bear nationally, internationally, and of course in Manitoba. So I think there's widespread support for the bill, recognizing it doesn't solve or cure every problem in the world or even those related directly to the polar bear, but it is certainly a step in the recognition of its importance in Manitoba.
And we thank the minister for those comments. Does the official critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Ms. Fontaine.
Yeah, just a couple of brief words. And I agree with my colleague that the bill's not going to solve a lot of the issues that are directly affecting polar bears. But I would suggest, and we are in support of this. I love polar bears. Most people do. I would suggest that actually making an official symbol of Manitoba does go to creating more awareness, right? And ensuring, Manitobans then have something that they can buy into. It is a part of our heritage as Manitobans. So certainly we support the bill and we're glad to support it.
And thank you very much for those comments. During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Is that agreed? Agreed? Shall clause 1 pass? Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 2 pass? Clause 2 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 3 pass? Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass? The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed, the bill shall be reported. Okay, we will now move on to clause by clause on Bill 10. Does the minister responsible have an opening statement? Do you have an opening? Okay, Minister Gordon.
So this bill will allow for pharmacists to continue to do point-of-care testing, something that will end at the end of this month if this bill is not enacted, and will also allow, as Mr. Cron said, for virtual meetings to occur. And again, as a result of the Emergency Measures Act no longer being in effect, without this bill going forward, we would not be able to continue to have virtual meetings that some individuals feel is necessary because they want to continue to social distance and to be able to meet in their at home or in their private residence, and this will allow for that to happen. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, we thank you, Minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? MLA Azaguera.
Thank you. I want to thank Mr. Cron for his presentation this evening. He spoke to some issues and concerns that we have with this bill as it stands currently. We all know the pandemic has forced governments across the world to consider how they operate. We understand that this government wants to extend the changes made temporarily during the pandemic. The emergency orders made under the Health Services Act expire on April 17th, 2022, this year. And the government has expressed its intention to have the legislation before us passed and in effect before then, which we do understand. We appreciate the government's wish to extend the current ability of pharmacists to administer point-of-care tests for those traveling internationally, since there are many international jurisdictions that require a test that has been verified by a pharmacist. But we're concerned that the legislation opens the door to expanding testing available for a fee, while government simultaneously pulls back a commitment to testing. We need to make sure that government doesn't make testing less accessible and force Manitobans to pay private businesses for access to tests. We also understand that the government wishes to make permanent provisions around electronic meetings and voting for things like condo boards, co-ops, corporations, and credit unions. We're not opposed in principle to this part of the legislation. We also see the value of technology for bringing people together. Used correctly, we see online meeting tools as a way to enhance participation and to make it more convenient. However, we need to make sure that these changes are made without making it harder to participate for those without access to technology and those with disabilities. For example, Bill 10 envisions that organizations might send an email, not letter, providing a Zoom link and an explanation on how to use Zoom. We don't feel that this is sufficient to ensure access. There should be a responsibility on these organizations, whether it be a condo board, co-op board, corporation, or credit union, to ensure that if they are going to fully go online for their meetings, they must do everything possible to ensure that everyone can participate fully. With that, I hope the minister considers amendments to ensure full participation for those without internet and those with disabilities for board meetings and such. Thank you.
And we thank the member for the question, for the statement. So during the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Also, if there is agreement from the committee, the chair will call clauses in blocks that conform to pages, with the understanding that we will stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed? Thank you. So shall clauses 1 and 2 pass? Clauses 1 and 2 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 3 pass? Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 4 through 7 pass? Clauses 4 through 7 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 8 through 10 pass? Clauses 8 through 10 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 11 through 14 pass? Clauses 11 through 14 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 15 and 16 pass? Clauses 15 and 16 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 17 and 18 pass? Clauses 17 and 18 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 19 through 22 pass? Clauses 19 through 22 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 23 and 24 pass? Clauses 23 and 24 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 25 through 27 pass? Clauses 25 through 27 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 28 and 29 pass? Pass. Clauses 28 and 29 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 30 through 33 pass? Clauses 30 through 33 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 34 and 35 pass? Clauses 34 and 35 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 36 through 38 pass? Clauses 36 through 38 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 39 and 40 pass? Clauses 39 and 40 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 41 and 42 pass? Pass. Clauses 41 and 42 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 43 through 45 pass? Clauses 43 through 45 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 46 through 48 pass? Clauses 46 through 48 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 49 through 51 pass? Clauses 49 through 51 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 52 and 53 pass? Clauses 52 and 53 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 54 pass? Clause 54 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass? The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed, the bill shall be reported. We'll move on to Bill 11. Does the minister responsible for Bill 11 have an opening statement? Minister Gertsen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Thank the opposition House Leader and the House Leader for the Liberal caucus for discussions on this bill. Most of the content came from committee and recommendations from the Chief Electoral Officer and her team. We discussed it at the standing committee, came through recommendations in the annual report. A couple of things were added, including the elimination of the publishing of addresses for candidates. And I've had good discussions even in advance of the bill being tabled with the two opposition House leaders. So I think there's good understanding of what the bill does, as it should for elections bills. I want to thank the Chief Electoral Officer and her team for these recommendations. And I know the process is sometimes a bit clunky when it comes to getting legislation passed, but we're at this stage now when it comes to committee, and I look forward to going through third reading. The provisions are new to legislation, but they've been used before already under the committee provisions. So the vote anywheres, the electronic strike off, I think, has been used in advance voting. The tabulators have been used in other jurisdictions, and I think maybe in by-elections, but it's been well tested. It's not electronic voting per se. I'll make that clear because there's some confusion about that. It's just counting the ballots electronically. And then the provision to remove the addresses, I think, just brings us in line with other provinces. There's lots of good reasons for that. I know one of the things that was discussed and was added to the bill was the ability for people to bring forward their own devices when it comes to reading, if they have a reading disability or a sight disability. I think that that's really, really important. So thank the Chief Electoral Officer and her team for that as well. So I think this has been a bill that has had good cooperation from start, hopefully to finish, although we're not quite at the finish line yet. I do know that officials from the Chief Electoral Officer's team from Elections Manitoba are here. If there are questions from the committee members that haven't already been answered, I suppose there could be a leave for them to answer questions, but in the absence of that, we're certainly willing to see this bill pass at this point.
I thank the Minister for those comments. Does the critic for the official opposition have an opening statement? Ms. Fontaine.
So first, let me just say I echo my colleagues' sentiments here tonight. I just want to, as always, just say miigwech to the Chief Electoral Officer and the whole team at Elections Manitoba. I agree with my colleague, the Government House Leader, that this has been a bill that has enjoyed the cooperation of all three parties here in the House. And as we know, voter participation is the cornerstone of our democracy, and we must do everything possible to make voting easier and more accessible for anyone eligible to vote. And certainly Bill 11 is a step in the right direction. The amendments for electronic strike-off using tabulators puts Manitoba in line with other jurisdictions who indicate that the approach is welcomed by voters and staff and by political participants who can access information quickly and accurately. This will make the voting process more efficient, convenient, and safe. Additionally, the ability to vote anywhere in advance voting and anywhere in your electoral district on election day will make it more convenient for Manitobans to cast their vote at a location near them. While this bill has many positive steps forward in voter participation, I would still suggest we've heard from folks that are visually impaired that are eager to see the introduction of electronic voting machines to allow them to vote independently. And of course, in any election bills, it is incumbent on us to modernize our electoral processes. So I'm assuming at some point we will get to that part for electronic voting. There's constantly a need for more improvements and advancements to ensure equitable access for all. Additionally, a political candidate should feel safe in their homes, and that's why it's important not to publish their addresses online, as we've all seen in the last couple of years, and certainly in the last year, what politicians have had to endure in the last couple of years, particularly under the banner of COVID. So I welcome that our addresses will no longer be published online. The NDP is in support of Bill 11's changes that enhance voter participation and protect those for running, those that are running in office. And again, I say miigwech to the whole team at Elections Manitoba.
And we thank the member for those comments. During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in the proper order. Also, if there is agreement from the committee, the chair will call clauses in blocks that conform to pages, with the understanding that we will stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed? Agreed, thank you. Shall clauses 1 and 2 pass? Clauses 1 and 2 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 3 pass? Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 4 through 8 pass? Clauses 4 through 8 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 9 through 13 pass? Clauses 9 through 13 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 14 through 16 pass? Clauses 14 through 16 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 17 and 18 pass? Clauses 17 and 18 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 19 through 22 pass? Clauses 19 through 22 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 23 through 27 pass? Clauses 23 through 27 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 28 through 30 pass? Clauses 28 through 30 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 31 and 32 pass? Clauses 31 and 32 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 33 and 34 pass? Clauses 33 and 34 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 35 and 36 pass? Clauses 35 and 36 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 37 pass? Clause 37 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 38 through 41 pass? Clauses 38 through 41 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 42 pass? Clause 42 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 43 through 46 pass? Clauses 43 through 46 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 47 and 48 pass? Clauses 47 and 48 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 49 through 52 pass? Clauses 49 through 52 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 53 through 55 pass? Clauses 53 through 55 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 56 pass? Clause 56 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 57 through 59 pass? Clauses 57 through 59 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 60 and 61 pass? Clauses 60 and 61 are accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass? The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed, the bill shall be reported. The hour being 6:33 p.m., what is the will of the committee? Committee rise.